Alright, so what's up you guys? I know it's been a while since I've created a video, and I figured I'd do a little video right now about the WRX. So a lot's changed on the car, but there's a lot that I've learned over the past few years about owning these cars, not only my last WRX and my wife's WRX, but this one as well. And I wanted to go over a few things that might help you make your WRX or STI last you a very, very long time in terms of reliability. Now, these cars can be reliable, but it takes responsibility, and I think that that's what leads to a lot of failures, is a lot of people not taking responsibility for their own actions. So these are a few things that I want to go over with you guys about what you can do to make your WRX just a little bit more reliable. Okay, so the first thing is one that probably doesn't need to be spoken about that much, which is maintenance. All right, all you got to do is just maintenance your vehicle properly. Do your oil changes on time. Make sure you're using a good quality oil and a good quality oil filter. That'll last you a pretty long time. Now, you can run these cars 5,000 miles between oil changes. It is recommended between 3,000 and 5,000 miles to go ahead and get it done. But use a good quality oil and oil filter with your WRX, as well as change your spark plugs in a proper manner. So if it says that in your owner's manual, if it says it needs to be changed, the spark plugs need to be changed every 60,000 miles, do it every 60,000 miles. Don't wait for the part to fail. Don't wait for it to start misfiring because the electrode is corroded. Just replace them at 60,000 miles, okay? Little $35 worth of parts can help save a motor that's going to cost you anywhere from about $2,000 to $3,000 for a used one. Okay, so just do your basic maintenance stuff. Do your timing belts on time. Little things that can actually help. Clean your mass airflow sensor. That does some amazing stuff. If you go and clean your mass airflow sensor, I would do it once, every 6 months. Or you can also do it on every oil change if you'd like to. But I would say once every 6 months, I would go and clean the mass airflow sensor. Particularly if you're like me and you're running an aftermarket intake system, you're really going to want to keep that mass airflow sensor nice and clean. Okay, so that is probably another good little trick to use. The other little trick is there's a crank sensor that's right underneath your alternator. Now, I haven't really checked it on this particular car, on my 2010, but I know on the old EJ205 motors, there was a crank sensor, and I believe it's still there on the 2.5 blocks. That's right underneath your alternator. And if you can, every so often, maybe once a year, clean that off. The reason is it's because it's a magnetic crank sensor. And having a rubber belt, sometimes the rubber pieces, little bits that come off of that belt get slung up on the magnetic sensor, and it'll clog a reading. It'll make a reading off. So it can send your ignition timing off. It can say that your crank is off timing a little bit, and now your whole computer's trying to readjust everything, trying to get everything within proper timing so it doesn't explode the motor. Thing is, there might not be anything wrong, but because the sensor's off, it's going to give problems, and it could cause pre-detonation or not igniting fast enough, causing less throttle response or loss of power. And the same thing goes for the mass airflow sensor. Having an improper reading on your mass airflow sensor can cause multiple issues, from the ignition to air-fuel ratio to timing to whatever. So making sure your sensors are clean is also very, very important on these cars. So you've got your oil change, you got your spark plugs, you got your sensors, you got timing belts. Just do basic maintenance on this car. It'll last a very, very long time. The other big mistake, the other huge mistake that a lot of people do is by your driving. Okay? Now there's a couple of things that people do wrong with these cars, and this is why I'm going to explain them to you, is because that's important to me. these cars aren't tested at their limits for hundreds of thousands of miles. They are built to be daily driver cars. So driving it at the limit 60, 70, 80% of the time, which means racing it, driving it, in boost all the time, those things, the engine's not, even though it's built to have a turbocharger on it, it's not built to be seeing those boost pressures and that amount of load all the time. It's built to be a daily driver, which means it's built to be normally driven most of the time and to see some spirited driving maybe 25, 30% of the time. So changing your driving style, if you like to race the car, stop. It'll last you a lot longer if you stop racing the car, okay? It's built to be a daily driver. It's built to be a car that can be reliable, but you have to take it on your responsibility to drive it the way that it was meant to be driven, which is normally. There is no car out there that was meant to be driven at its limit all of the time. Now, naturally aspirated cars, those engines are usually going to last a lot longer than boosted engines because there isn't such a high load put on those motors. Okay, so a Corvette or a Honda Civic or something like that, yeah, they can be driven at their limit all the time because there's nothing forcing air onto the internals and creating high pressure in there, or high amounts of pressure, I should say, in there, in the combustion chambers. So keeping that in mind, yes, those engines can handle it, but even then, there has been failures. You look in the Mustang world, there have been Mustangs, Coyote Mustangs, that have been driven at their limit numerous amounts of times, and people have popped the motors. Okay, so it's not just a Subaru thing, it happens to all types of vehicles. So just driving the car normally is a positive thing. Now, the other issue, and this still involves driving, is putting a high load at low RPMs. And what I mean by that is, say you're driving around, you put it in 5th gear, okay, and you decide you're cruising at, let's say, 60 miles an hour, turning about 2,600 RPM, and you decide, hey, I want to just hear the boost pressure and the blow-off valve go off. So you lay into it at 2,600 RPM, you hit your 16, 17 PSI of pressure and let off the throttle, okay? The problem with that is it puts such a high load on the pistons and the rods in the combustion chambers and in the crankcase at such a low RPM that the engine can't handle it at that low RPM. Plus your timing tables, your fueling tables in the ECU aren't usually built for that type of pressure, that type of air being forced into the engine at that low of RPM. So that's another thing that people do wrong. If you want to hear power, downshift it. Put it in 3rd, put it in 4th, do 2nd, whatever. But don't lay into it at a low RPM at a high load. Just don't do it. Downshift it. That's probably one of the biggest things. Just downshift the car, okay? Same thing if you're going to pass somebody. Don't just keep it in 5th gear and try to roll into the throttle and pass them. Downshift it. Trust me, it's a lot better. A, you're going to pass them faster, but B, it's better for your motor that way, okay? So those are two things that I think are probably the biggest thing, and that doesn't require any modification. That's just people driving the car and then maintaining it the way that it needs to be maintained. So then the next thing that's going to make your car more reliable than anything else is getting a good tune. Now, obviously, you have a Cobb access port, or a lot of people have Cobb access ports for these things, and Cobb does an excellent job giving a pretty decent base map for the car, okay? The problem is that base map, those 93 maps, those 91 maps, those are built for pretty much all around the country. If you have 93 octane in your state, then you're going to be able to run that map in your state. You can run it in any state that has 93 octane or 91 octane, okay, for that matter. So if you're living the Appalachians of North Carolina, at 3,000, 4,000 feet above sea level, and you have 93 octane, that map's going to be okay to run there. But for me here in Florida, I'm at sea level and I got 93 octane, so that map is still safe for even me. So as you can see, it covers a broad spectrum. Problem is in certain areas, because of the air density and the tables and the mapping, it might not necessarily be the best for your vehicle and the types of fuels that you have on there. Okay, so with that being said, get a custom map done. Even if you are running what Cobb exactly says for their map, so say an SF intake with the Cobb downpipe and the Cobb catback exhaust, okay? Even with those mods that Cobb says is perfectly safe to run with those, it's still such a like watered down map that there's room for improvement, but there's also room to make the car more reliable and run even smoother than it was before. Okay, so getting a custom map done, whether it's an e-tune or a dyno tune or a street tune by a good reputable tuner, is very, very important. And that's one of the things I have to say about this car. This car, I have had it tuned by Torque Performance, and I have to say that the engine runs absolutely amazing. It runs so much better than it ever did before. So getting a good tune is very important, and I will definitely tell anybody that if you're going to do anything for your car, get a really good tune. Okay, so tuning is probably one of the best mods you can do to this car, and it will help make your car more reliable just as long as you have a good tuner doing it for you. Okay, so probably the fourth part of this, and this is going to be probably the most debatable one in the comment section below, is about equal length versus unequal length headers. And I already know that there's going to be comments about unequal length being better than equal length or vice versa, okay? The evidence holds true that equal length is better than the unequal length manifolds that come factory on this car, okay? I'll explain why in just a second, but here are the downsides to an equal length. You lose that iconic Subaru rumble, okay? And a lot of people hate that. They don't like that. That's what makes a Subaru is that rumble sound, okay? And I haven't had the video up. I haven't had a chance to edit it yet. This is kind of more of a quick video that I just wanted to post up and get myself back in the YouTube game here. I have equal length manifold on this car now. I have an HKS equal length manifold on this car now. And I know some people are going to hate me for going with an equal length. Hate all you want. Here's why I'm going to tell you that you should get an equal length manifold, okay? The engine, night and day. Now, I already talked to my tuner. Always talk to your tuner about mods to your car before you do them, okay? Always. That hands down. So I contacted my tuner before I did this mod, and I talked to him about it thoroughly before doing it. I asked if it was okay, because I have a Torque Performance Stage 2 map, if it was okay to run an equal length manifold on the Stage 2 map. Now, he said yes, it is absolutely safe to do that. I won't be able to get the most power out of it until we retune it, and there's a reason why I haven't retuned it yet. But the car will run safely with the unequal length, or with the equal length manifold on it. Okay, in fact, it'll probably run better, but I can get more performance out of it once it's custom tuned. So I bolted these equal length manifolds, or this equal length manifold on the car, and reset the ECU so that everything relearns, just like you're supposed to do. Anytime you mod a car, you always want to reset the ECU. You also want to tune it, of course, but you want to reset the ECU. I reset the ECU, I started the engine up, and the absolute first thing I noticed, the engine is smoother. It idles smoother. The engine is also quieter, and I'm not talking about like exhaust note quieter. I'm talking about like the injectors quieter. You know, usually you can hear the injector snap, 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 snap. You put the equal length manifold on, not joking with you all, everything is quiet now. Everything is smooth. Everything's quiet. Everything is like how a proper car should be running. I have it idling right now with the AC on. There's no injector noise. There's no knock, 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 knock from the from the engine itself. It is entirely smooth. There's nothing vibrating here. Everything is absolutely smooth in this car. And I have a full 3-inch catless downpipe, 3-inch catback exhaust, going out the back of this car. Everything is smooth. Everything's nice and quiet in here, okay? Here's the reason why, okay? Cylinders 2 and 4, you have 1 and 3 on this side, you have 2 and 4 on this side, okay? Cylinders 2 and 4 are the furthest away from that O2 sensor. You have a short runner at 1 and 3, you have a long runner at 2 and 4, okay? Now, 2 and 4, being that they're the furthest away, those two have when it gets to the O2 sensor reads, not only air-fuel ratio, but it also reads exhaust temperatures as well. So when it's reading, this cylinder's hot, this cylinder is colder because of the longer runner, and plus the timing of it, the engine is constantly, the ECU is constantly trying to manage this out to make sure that the pressures and the temperatures of all cylinders are equal with each other. Now, cylinders 4 is the furthest, absolute furthest away, which is the most prominent one to fail. Cylinder 4 usually has a lot of timing pulled from it because it's trying to lean out that cylinder. It thinks that this cylinder over here is colder than these over here. So what it does is, in order to heat it up, it leans it out. So it creates a higher temperature. Well, what's the killer of piston rings and pistons and whatnot in a motor? Temperature. Extreme temperature. That's what can kill an engine. Well, you have that one that's the furthest away. So over time, what is going to happen? Heat gets to the piston or the rings and they fail, okay? So when you have an equal length manifold, everything gets equal out. The cylinder pressures, all of a sudden the ECU reads cylinder pressures are exactly the same. The cylinder temperatures are exactly the same. The air-fuel ratio on every single cylinder is exactly the same. So it now relaxes that one side, this side over here, because it's not having to advance the ignition timing or retard the ignition timing. It's not having to add or reduce fuel to this side, because now this side equals this side and the engine runs in harmony with each other. That's why you want to have an equal length manifold on your car. Yes, the Subaru Rumble sounds more manly and it sounds better and it doesn't sound ricey and it doesn't sound like a typical 4-cylinder, and it's very unique and people love that sound. I totally get it. I totally agree with all of you. But all of the information that I have read, all of the information that I have gathered on personal experiences, and I've ran this header on here for about 2,000 miles. I haven't had to reset the ECU once. I don't get any knock out of my motor. I don't have any fine knock. I don't have any feedback knock. Everything runs great on this car. I get incredible gas mileage out of this thing with the equal length on here. And the thing is it's smooth. It runs great. I can get on the highway. It doesn't drone really bad. It's a great piece to add to your car. So having the equal length manifold, I feel that having the equal length manifold has helped its reliability just a little bit better. Now, I'm not saying that this is a solve all problem here, because it's clearly not. Maintenance, driving, and tuning are your big three. Those are the big three that you want to go on. Adding the equal length is just something that just helps just that little bit more, because you can still have a reliable Subaru running on an unequal length manifold. Absolutely, 100%. Yes, you can. But just on my experience, just on what I've gained, this to me is what I have learned works for this car. So for me talking to all of you, these are what I consider to be the best way to make sure that your WRX or STI lasts you a very long time. So just follow these 4 steps, I would say the first 3 you really want to follow, but maybe the 4th one, if you're feeling wanting to try something a little different. I like the exhaust sound, I'm not gonna lie, but you go with a equal length, give it a shot, try it out, see if it works. If it does for you, that's great. If not, hey, it's pretty easy swap out, not gonna lie. Go ahead and do it, give it a shot. I like the sound. I think it sounds pretty mean for a 4-cylinder, but some people don't like it. So but just follow some of these things and you will never have any issues. Now, like I said, it's not it's not a resolve all solution, but these are just things that I've learned over the years that I want to pass on to the general knowledge of you guys to make your WRX last longer. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Like, share, comment in the section below, subscribe if you could. That would be fantastic. I'm trying to get some new videos out here. I have a little bit more time opened up now, so if you guys would like, just please comment, like, and share. So thank you very much, guys. Talk to you later. Enjoy.